Glad there's a few people stayed around. Talks on programming with Google, or if you can Google, you can program. So, who here is a developer? Right, that's half the room. You can leave. This is for people who don't develop. It's for people who want to learn code but think they can't. So what I'm going to cover is I'm going to go over some sort of key fundamentals for being a developer, some sort of basic things you need to know, and then hopefully interactively we're going to build a script to hack an app. Who am I? I'm Robin Wood. DigiNinja is my website. I'm on Twitter. You can find me. I'm from the UK, so just a little island over there. I know you Americans have trouble speaking English properly and with some of the spellings, so where applicable, I have tried to translate. If you have troubles, just ask. My qualification for doing this talk, I've been a developer for most of my commercial life, and before that, I was just sort of playing at university and as a kid. So I've been developing for years. Started off in desktop apps, moved to web apps. Now I'm not a pen tester, but I still do a fair bit of development work on the side, just for sort of a mate's company. And I counted on my website the other day, I've released over 50 tools. Most of these tools are things we're going to develop later. They're short, 10, 20, maybe 50-line scripts. They're single purpose. They're maybe not the most efficient, but they work. And that's what I'm going to try and get over to you today. You don't need to be an amazing coder. You don't need to write the best code. You don't need to write the most efficient code. You just need to be able to write something. And the idea of what I'm going to show you is that at the end of this, you're going to be able to knock up little scripts to help you as testers or as admins or just doing your daily life as whatever you do. I'm going to start off with some theory. What I want to try and do is get everybody to the same level. So some of this, if you know basic computing stuff, you've done bits of programming, you'll have heard it before. But I want to get everybody up to the same point. Some bits also aren't going to be quite technically correct, but again, they're as good as they need to be. I'm going to start off with variables. Variables are basically a way to hold bits of information, a way to hold data. So start off with strings. Strings are text, really. Anything that you can stick in double quotes or single quotes, sentences, phrases, single words. You notice I've got numbers there. Numbers in quotes are still counted as strings. Next, you've got integers. Integers are whole numbers. Positive, negative. Any of you developers know what that number actually is, the big one starting with 9? No. That's the largest 64 bits signed int you can get. Technically, it's a long or a long or a big int long or something like that, depending on what language, but it's still an integer. It's a positive number. Then you've got your float. So a float is anything with a decimal after it. So you've got your pi, 42, whatever, negative decimals, they're fine. Also, 10.0. It's got a decimal on the end of it, so a lot of languages will still consider that a float. Something to remember if you're having trouble with numbers, it's like things aren't quite working right. It's something to think about. Arrays and lists. The best way I could think of this for people who aren't developers would be bullet points in Word. Bullet points can contain whatever you want. They can be numbers, they can be data, they can be a sentence, they can be a paragraph. You can indent them, you can play with them. That's basically what a list is. It's a list of other variables. And there are also hashes and arrays and other ways of phrasing this. But again, for basic level, just think of it as a list of things that you can access. And finally, we've got objects. Objects are a bit like an array. It's a way to group things together, but you also put on functionality to modify and to access those variables. So on a car, you might have things like number of wheels grouped in together with color and with number of doors and engine speed, stuff like that. We might also have functions on it. We'll talk about functions in a minute, but there are ways to call the data to modify it. So that's kind of the idea of your basic variable types. To put things into variables, because a variable on its own is useless, you have to be able to put content into it. Top one there, I'm going to try and stay fairly language agnostic to start with, but the top one there is a PHP style. Variables in some languages have to start with a certain symbol. So in PHP it starts with $. Next one is more your Ruby Python style. It's got an underscore in the middle of it, and you set it equal to hello. But you don't have to specify that you're creating a variable. Variable equals string. Something to watch out on with that, because you can just create variables wherever you want to, you don't have to declare them, you don't have to say this is a variable, I'm about to use it. If you get a typo halfway through your code, so you might maybe put my string, and you try and use that, as far as the language is concerned, that's fine. You've just created out of nowhere a new variable. So if you've got things that aren't quite working right in a Ruby, Python kind of language, it's something worth checking. Have you got the same spelling all the way through it? Other languages like JavaScript, you declare your variable first. So you say var, variable name, and you can give it a value. That's a bit easier on the debugging, because if you haven't declared the variable, you try and use it later, language is going to go, no, don't know about that one. So it's easier to catch little typos, little mistakes. And then finally, you've got more the C style there. You say what the variable type is. So here you're saying, I'm declaring an integer. It's type an integer called I, and then setting I equals 27. That's called strongly typed. You've declared what you're doing. You're creating an integer called I, and then you're putting stuff into it later. If you try and throw a string into that, bomb, no, can't do it. So you go from, you can throw anything in wherever you want to, which is called loosely typed, all the way down to strongly typed. You've got to specify what you're doing and lay it out. For any of the developers again, does anybody know what that style of calling, of naming variables is called? Ron's thinking. Go on. Yeah, Hungarian. Camel case, not quite. That one there is called Pascal case, because it's got a lowercase first letter. Camel case has uppercase first letter. That one there is snake case. Just mentioning that because different languages don't enforce conventions on it, but they prefer it. So things like PHP might prefer that style. I think Python tends to prefer that style. You will, once you start getting into programming, you will get your style of doing it. I always tend to do snake case. Don't know why, it's just what I've kind of grown up with. But if you want to fit in with a language, try and do what they're doing. It just makes it a bit easier in the long run because everything looks nice. Conditionals. Equality. So usually double equals for equality. So you can say, if my number is 27, then do something, print 27. You can do the same with strings. If the message is a string, says hello. Basic equality. It's the kind of thing you can read and you can understand. That's going to be a lot of programming. You think, oh, I don't really understand, it's hard. Just look at it and read it. And a lot of programming languages, if you can read basic English, you can read the language. Some bits you might get a bit stuck with it, but generally you can work through it, particularly if it's been well written and well laid out. A gotcha to watch out for on this. When you're allocating variables, we said single equals is set variable equal to. I actually made this mistake while I was setting up the demo for this, so it definitely happens. If x single equals 42, what that's doing is that's saying try and set x equal to 42. If you are able to do it, then return true, otherwise return false. So yeah, set x equals 42, that works, and then you drop into here. So that means every time you run this, it will work, and you will end up with x at 42. It sounds like, what is he talking about? it's something to watch out for. It's a mistake people will make at some point. So if you're getting variables, they're getting messed up a bit, you're getting if statements that aren't working properly, just have a look, check, have you put single equals rather than double equals in a place by accident? Inequality, usually exclamation mark equals, bang equals, pling equals, whatever you want to call it. Some languages, it's two angle brackets going either direction. It's greater than or it's less than. And same as the other one. If not equals 10, print it's not 10. Otherwise, else statement. So if it's 10, print that. Else, print x is not 10. And you can start combining all these. So if x is 10, then say it's 10. Else, otherwise, if x is not 20, say it's not 20. Otherwise, if it's not 20, say it isn't 20. Otherwise, it must be 20. That's not the best way of doing that. As I said, this is not going to be the most efficient stuff that you're going to be writing, but it works. Start like this, get into it, and then learn better ways of doing things. Then you've got some maths things. So again, basic stuff that you learned at, I'm going to say high school. I don't know whether that's the right age bracket, but it is at home. If x is less than 10, do something. If x is greater than or equals to 10, do stuff. It's self-explanatory. You just got to work out, just got to learn the symbols and how to put them in. You can do Boolean stuff, so you can say if A is equal to hello and B is equal to Robin, then do something. So that's Boolean ands, Boolean ors. If username is root or UID equals 0. I've seen this mistake in web apps before. What they didn't realize is that users could set their own usernames. So I set my username to be root, bang, I had full admin privileges of the site, even though my UID was not 0. Some languages, rather than ands and ors, they use double ampersand and double pipe. So double ampersand is and, double pipe is the or. And if you look at this bottom one thinking, how do I read that? What's the order? To be honest, I've no idea. What I would do in that case is use brackets. So if you're doing nice, big, multiple things, start bracketing it up. So the top one of these, if x is 10 and y is 7, or z is 7, is different to if x is 10 and y is 3 or z is 3. So you use the brackets to group things together so that you can say exactly what you need. And if you're going to be writing some of this up and you've got something a little bit complex, write it down, think it out, work out what you want to do. And you can prove stuff like this using a truth table. Again, something you probably wouldn't need to get into, but if you did, writing something like that, working out all the different combinations, you can see where the two aren't equal. But to start off with, you'll probably just be doing basic stuff. And if you start needing to group things together like that, you can probably drop into multiple ifs and then start combining them later. Next, we've got loops. We're going to do a couple of basic types of loops. For loops. For loop is you're going to do this thing so many times. So this example here, you're going to do something 10 times. So you create a variable I. While it's less than 10, do the loop. Every time you finish the loop, increase I, keep going round. And it'll print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When it gets to 9, it'll come back to the top. I will become I plus 1, so I will become 10. It'll check. I is now greater than 10, so it'll drop out. So you will get as far as 10, and you're out. So for loops are good for when you know exactly how many things you want to do. I want to do this 10 times, I want to do it 100 times. Whatever, I want to do it so many times. The other side to that is you've got while loops. While loops are, I want to do this kind of until something happens. I don't know how many times till it happens, it'll happen at some point. So in this example, you wait for a user to press a key. Check what key they've pressed. If they press yes, while key is not yes. So they press anything other than yes, they go back into loop, it says not pressed, not yet. Gets the key again, gets the key again, gets the key again, until they've finished it. So this might be, we'll has this web page got some information in it, has this packet come in, has this log entry arrived, anything like that. It's until something happens. Blocks, kind of alluded to this on the ifs and the loops, but a block is a lump of code you do inside something else. So it's grouping things together. So in this if statement here, this language is using a then end. So everything in between it is done if the result happens. So that's your block in the if statement. So some languages will use the then and end. Some will use curly brackets. Some might use begin end. You will work out what language you choose, what delimiters the language uses. So that's the keyword or symbol delimited kind of blocks. The other version of this is Python style. I don't know any other languages that do it, but in Python it's all based on white space. So this red block here, so we're going if, these two statements they've got the same amount of white space, they're blocked in together. So print it worked, if x is 32, then print the answer is 32 as well, or and that. That's got more white space, so that's considered a different block. I think the reason Python did this, or this is what I've been told, is it's supposed to make code more readable. It enforces blocking, it enforces everything to look nice. So if you look at this example, I've put this in like this. I've made the blocks, I've put the white space in at the start, but I didn't have to. I could have done it like that if I'd have wanted. And you do see all sorts of messes when people do blocks, and it starts nice, and they add a bit extra code in, or they rearrange something, or they copy and paste something from somewhere else, and the spacing goes all over the place. And if you're using the sort of the keyword delimited, it doesn't matter how much space there is in there. It can look whatever of a mess it wants to. But if you're in Python, you've got to get this right. And a gotcha on this one, so you watch out from this, is tabs versus spaces. And it's got me a few times. I've copied and pasted code in, and the person who wrote the other code is using tabs, and I'm using spaces, or the other way around. A tab is not the same amount of white space as 4 space or 8 space or whatever. It's different. So again, in Python, if you're writing it and things are going wrong and your blocks aren't working, you look at it, it's not working, I don't understand why, then actually count the number of spaces. If your editor will let you, what I tend to do is I'll do a search for, if you're using 4 space indents, do a search for 4 spaces and get it to highlight it. And there it will pick up where there's an extra little space here or an extra space there. Or you'll see a line that's indented but it's not highlighted. That might be because they put tabs in. So it's really good for usability. It's a real pain if you sort of copy pasting stuff or you're moving things around and you just miss that one little bit. And last thing we're going to look at functions. Functions basically group code together. It avoids repetition. It makes things easier to maintain, stops silly mistakes. If you've got the same bit of code that you're using 50 times in a program, rather than have it 50 times and have 50 chances of making a slight typo in each one of them, you put it together, it's called a function. And then you can call that function and use it. It looks something like this. Declare your function. Again, this is all language specific. It won't always look like this, but it'll look similar. So you've got your function name, passing parameters in. There's your block, and then to call it, function name, and then your parameters. Some languages insist on the brackets, some don't. Ruby doesn't care whether you have the brackets or not. Python, you've got to have the brackets. And you can pass things out of functions. So this function checks whether a number's even or not. If it's even, it returns the negative of it. And never mentioned it before, but the percentage in there is a modular function. So divide something and return the remainder. It's just a little thing that you'll pick up as you're going along. You end up sort of Googling, which is what we're going to do in a minute. How do I find if a number's even or stuff like that? And you'll pick up just all these little extras that the language has that 99 times out of 100 you won't use. And then suddenly you go, how do I do this? Why do I need, or how do I do this extra bit? quick bit of Googling and you'll find stuff like that. But the way you return things in this particular language, you just do return and the variable. Again, language specific, but it will usually be something like return and then what you want to spit out of it. And some languages, doesn't matter what variable types you pass in. Others, when you get into languages like C, it will start to matter. You will say, I'm going to pass in a string followed by an integer, and it will start to get strict on you. But scripting languages, Ruby, Python, that kind of style, it doesn't matter. So we're going to do a little bit of practical. Quick disclaimer, what I'm going to show you is not for production code. This is why a lot of web app pen tests work, because people have done what I'm going to show you now and used it straight off for production. This is for quick, dirty hacks while you're working that will get the job done for you. While you're doing this, stay on the first page of Google. Don't go trawling off down multiple pages. If it's not on the first page of Google, rethink what you're searching for. And if you don't understand what's there at a common sense level, if you can't read it all and kind of go, well, yeah, it does that, then it does this, then don't use it. I've seen, there's a really big vulnerability a while ago. Somebody published an exploit for it, and it looked really legit. It was decent code all the way through, and the last line had this little obfuscated bit of code. And if you looked into it properly, removed the obfuscation, the last thing was system call rm-rf/. And part of the script checked that you were running as root. So if you'd have done a kind of a proper sniff test and that, had a look through it, you're going, yeah, understand all that. Got to the end, no, I don't quite understand that last line. Don't use it. Don't copy and paste it. Or do your research, work out exactly what it is. So I'm going to have to sit down for this, and I'm going to hope I can share my screen properly. Right. Nope. It looks like I can't duplicate, so come on, come back. So we're going to have a quick look. That's good. Right, we're going to have a look at this website, Puppy Mill Associates. We're doing a test on it. We've been given a username, so I can log in as Robin. And in we get. And we look at the profile page. Any app testers notice what could be a vulnerability on this page? Well, there's quite a lot, but yeah. The user ID is up here. So you see that? One of the things I would do, let's have a look at 81. And we see a different user. Now, I know if you're a Burp user or a Zap user, you could automate running through these users fairly easy, being Intruder or whatever the Zap equivalent is. But we're going to write a little script to do it, and we're going to use Google to write that script for us. So let's bring up our terminal. Can everybody see that if I just put, is that okay? Yeah, good. So we're going to do it in Ruby because I just chose Ruby when I started developing. Yeah. Ron says good choice. I agree with him. So we're going to do a little script that automates running through all these IDs, and we're going to look for an administrator user. So the first thing we're going to do, Ruby HTTP request. Oh, no, don't want to. No, go away. Such. Oh, come on, I'm not a robot. And anybody who knows my avatar will understand the irony of that. Yay, I've proved I'm human. Right, so we're going to search for things, and we're going to try and take the first result and see what we can do. So I've searched Ruby HTTP request. Wow, this is speedy internet. Come on. So here we have a lot of examples. NetHTTP was a rich library to build HTTP user agents, blah, blah, blah. Simple examples. Is that? This one looks a bit like what we want. It's making a web request, it's got an ID, or it's got a query string value, it's making the request. So let's take that, throw it into our script. Write it. And try it. We get an error. Okay, let's take the error. And throw it in. So if we're looking at this, this guy's giving an example of what he's doing. He's got, at the top of here, this line that we haven't got. And also, if we'd gone back to here and actually read it properly, all examples assume that you've loaded NetHTTP with this. So let's take this line, drop it in at the top, and while we're here, let's change this to, what's our URL? It's /profile, that, and run it. Well, it didn't give us an error, but didn't do anything. Let's go back on here, keep looking down. So we got puts the body. What does puts do? Puts adds a new line at the end of things, and print does not print it. So from that we can get the idea. Puts and print both print things to screen. And if you carried on Googling, you'd find more examples and more details. So this line here is saying puts res body, and res is equal to that lot. So using common sense and having a play, we're going to say, okay, res equals that, and then we're going to do puts res body. Nope, no body for, okay. If we have a look at the example, that says it returns a string. So res.body, remember from the variables, something dot something is an object. So I'm saying, so maybe that's an object. But that example says it's string. So let's just try put res. It's nothing. So that one didn't work. Let's move down a little bit. Let's try this one. So, and parameters, we're going to pass a parameter of ID of 80. Don't care about that. Let's take that off because that's how it looks in here. He's got index, he's got page, and then he's got his parameters. Get rid of these two. And he's already got his puts in there. Still nothing. Why is that one not working? So this is where you start sort of to bang your head on things and what's going on. Why is that failing? I know why that's failing, because we're not logged in. you've got to be logged in on this app to see the profile page. If I log out and then try and get a profile, we get redirected. So the reason it's not working there is because we've got to redirect. So these are the kind of little things you've got to think about. What's happening when you're using the application? What could be going wrong? Why is your thing not working? Don't automatically assume that you've got a bug in your code. So how do you get logged in? How do you log into an app? Usually done with cookies. Let's have a look in here. Oh, we need to log back in again. Cookies, view cookie. Yeah, there we go, we've got a cookie. So we're doing HTTP GET request. We want to know how to send a cookie. Ruby that cookies. And if anybody sees a way to send cookies, let's try send cookies. There you go, somebody asking, I'd like to open page with Ruby and I want to be authenticated. And this guy said, you've nearly done it right, but you've done that. And they give you a nice example here, a full working script on how to send cookies. So we'll take that. Let's have a look. It's similar to what we've been doing, but we've got an extra cookie in. So again, we've probably bin what we've done. Let's take that back. Put it in there. Let's put our question ID equals 80 back in that. Get rid of all this bit because we don't need it now. So we're progressing our script. We started with something basic that made the request. We worked out that that wasn't working. We tried something different. We made another request. We found out we needed to be logged in. Keep searching, keep changing our code. So down here we're setting a cookie. So the cookie they're doing is name and parameter, name and value. So let's go back, cookies, name, value. Oops. And there's our page. If we scroll up in this, we should see there we've requested user 80 and we've got information back for Julian who's got level user. So we've made a web request, we've passed the cookies, we've got the data back. If we want to then start iterating through and find other users, what are we going to use? Somebody? A loop? What kind of a loop? For loop. Perfect. So, Ruby for loop. Okay, so we've got while statements, while modifiers, untils, for. We've got an example. For I in 0 to 5, do something. And then you've got a variable called I. Okay, so that's a different way of writing it to the example I gave you before, but it's a similar thing. Run between 0 and 5, and then do something in the block of code. So I'm going to take that, put it there. And if you have a look, this uses an end to terminate it. So, and IDs, well, we were on ID 82. So let's say run between 1 and 100. So we do that. Now, we've got ID equals 80, which is fixed at the moment, and we've got a variable called I. So in a lot of languages, what you would do is you can use a plus to add strings together. In PHP, it would be a dot. In Ruby, adding things together is usually a plus. Let's give that a try. Whoop, back to that. Get another error. You can't convert a fixed num to a string. Back to Google. So this guy, he's trying to convert, looking at this and reading through it, he's trying to convert a string to an integer. So that's going the wrong way. Let's take the next one. I've hit upon a can't convert error. Seems simple enough. Ruby, unlike other languages, does not cast strings automatically. You need to do it manually. So number.toS. So Ruby has the idea of types, and it says you can't add a number to a string because they're different types. But you can convert a number to a string by doing this .toS on it. So go back over here, I.toS. That was quick, but if we scroll back up that, we've got Lincoln as a user, we've got Natalie, we've got John, and if we keep going up, we've got 100 users in there. But we want to find the admin user. So if we look at this, it says level equals user. Well, we're going to make some guesses here. What about if it said level equals admin? So we're going to want to find, in all this block of stuff that comes back, where it's any pages that have the string level, colon, and there's a space in there. Got to be careful with this kind of thing if you're doing matches. Level, colon, space, and we're going to guess admin. So we're going to do Ruby. Let's go find string in text. I have a variable with a content, and I want to find a substring in it. How can I do it? You can use the include method. So his string is ABCDE, and does the string include CDE? So it basically says string dot include, and then what you're looking for. I remember I mentioned earlier on functions, this is Ruby. Ruby doesn't need brackets. Some things will require brackets, some won't. But this is calling the function include and using the string. So back over here, and where I was talking about blocks, this a little bit hard to read at the moment. Let's indent it a little bit. You don't need it, but it's going to start making things look a bit nicer. We've got our for loop, and we've got stuff in the block there. We've got our r.body, that's the string, that's the text that comes back, this lot. So let's say, what's the example? If the string dot include question mark, and then what we're looking for. If r.body, which is our page, include, and the string we're looking for is level admin. We don't need any thens after it, and we have a block finished with an end. So let's only print the body if it matches. And for nice indenting, let's move that in a bit. What have we got? Well, it looks like we've got a single response. Look in there. So we've got a username, we've got that they're an admin, but what we haven't got is what ID they are. So, last thing we need to do is print the URL. We've already got the URL up here, and we know that this is a string. We've already got the URL, we've got the i.2s, so we've made it into a string. So we can copy that, and we can say put and that. So let's run it again. And there we go. Take that, back to our app. And there we go. We've got Trevor's profile. We have written, including a line of white space, we've written 15 lines. We've taken it all from, well, I think one was the second hit in Google, everything else was the first hit. So we've gone through it. It's not really needed any human knowledge of programming. It's basically you've thought what you want, and you've asked Google for it, and Google has given you the results. And last couple of minutes, so I won't carry on with this, but if you carry on, what you can then do is you can start saying, okay, I want to find just a subsection of that page. So the next bit of it would have been go through and maybe just trim out the name, or trim out the level, or cut out other bits. But let's just finish off, and hopefully, if this will do it. Where have we got to? Come on. Oh, get back up, work. Slide view, normal. There we go. So, we've done it. Same disclaimer as before. This is not production code. Stay on the first page of Google, and if you don't understand what's there, don't use it. If it's got random, gobbledygook, rubbish, whatever in the middle of it, assume it's bad. What language? It doesn't matter. I basically picked Ruby by the toss of a coin. It was either Ruby or Python. Tossed a coin, Ruby won. Great. It could have just easily been Python. They both do the same thing. They just do it in slightly different ways. Some people will argue really religiously on one or the other. I don't care. I will use whatever does the job. I've got tools on my site that are written in Perl, because Perl was the only language that had the libraries to do what I wanted. And use language has got support in your network. If you've got friends that are really die-hard Perl developers, then I hate to say it, but learn Perl. Because once you've learned one language, you can then learn others off it. Learn where you're going to get your help from. Practice, practice, practice. The more stuff you write, the more practice you get, the better you'll get at doing it. The better you get at thinking about it, the better you'll get at Google searching, and you'll write better code. Keep all your work. That was, what, 15-line script that iterated through. When you finish the job, don't just throw that away and get rid of it. Store it somewhere. Because you can guarantee in 6 months' time you'll have another test where you maybe need to enumerate bank account numbers or statements or something. And it'll be the exact same code, apart from you'll be doing a post rather than a get. And if you can take that code, change get to post, and have it 99% working, brilliant. It saves you that half hour, or whatever of digging back through Google going, how did I do it? The number of times I've got to a job and it's like, I did that before. I'll take that lump of code out of there and that lump of code out of there. And suddenly you've got a working script that just needs a couple of little tweaks by chopping and pasting things together. Similarly, I've got to a job and go, I've done that and I've searched for ages to find it and I can't find the script. So if you put all your things, get yourself a private Git repository or something like that, throw them in it and keep stuff. You'll suddenly realize that was really inefficient. I did that badly. I'll just tweak that, I'll touch it up. And suddenly you'll get a script that you can release. And if it's something good and generic, release it, put it out to the public. People will fork it on GitHub and come back to you and say, well, actually, you did that rubbish. Here's improvement. You look at it and go, yeah, I did do it bad. And improve on it, and it will grow. So I think that's my time up. Anybody got any questions? Nope. That's my contact details. If you want any information, I'll put the slides up. I'll put the example script up somewhere. I've got the same thing I did in Python. I've got the searches. I've got the results. So I know you can do it in Python as well as Ruby. I reckon you could probably do it in Golang or Perl or whatever you wanted. give it a go. If you're not a developer, just find yourself a couple of hours at a weekend and just search for what you want to do. Copy, paste, tweak. If you get really stuck, throw it out on Twitter. How do I do this? And you'll get answers. And that's it. Pub time, meal time, party time, whatever. Enjoy.